Hospitality Action recently published a report based on its yearly industry-wide wellbeing survey. The aim of the Taking the Temperature survey is to reveal insights about mental health, support systems, and the daily challenges faced by people at every level of hospitality. I talked with Jeremy Gibson, Marketing and Operations Director at Hospitality Action. We discussed the survey's background, key findings, and what employees can do with the results, Hospitality Action's wider services such as grants and the Employee Assistance Programme, and how you can show your support by taking part in Walk for Wellbeing. Well, thanks for joining me today, Jeremy.
Brilliant. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Well, one of the most important reasons we're getting together today is to talk about the Hospitality Action Survey, which has some very interesting findings.
Yeah, it's the fourth time we've done it, and certainly it's thrown up some interesting results again this year.
Yeah, I was scrolling through it quite a few times. So this is so previous surveys, 2018, 2020, and 2024, and obviously now 2025.
So we first did it, in a time long forgotten pre-pandemic, and we did it then to frame, it's kind of, to literally frame the situation as it was then before we started as an organization to do kind of more of the mental health campaigning we've done since. Then we ran it again in the pandemic, I think for what we all assumed would be the low watermark. So we ran it during the pandemic, and obviously, the results then pointed towards people being deeply concerned about their future and about kind of the future of the industry. And then, a bit like loads of organizations, it took us a little while to get out of emergency mode post-pandemic. So we didn't think about the survey. We just thought about kind of rolling with the punches that were coming our way. But after a couple of years, we just realized that, you thought that the pandemic was as bad as it would be, and it was in many ways, but the volume of calls that Hospitality Action were getting and the issues that people were presenting with, so, mental health problems exacerbated by insecure employment, by money worries, by debt, they just weren't going anywhere. So we reprised the survey a couple of years ago, in order just to kind of have an annual barometer for how the industry's doing. But I think it's really important to say at the very start of any conversation about this that the industries in which we operate are incredibly tough, and they're having to deal with, upward cost pressures from everything from ingredients to electricity, poor consumer confidence, inhospitable legislative environment. And I think, the events and hospitality industry have taken such a kicking that us holding a mirror up and saying, hey, don't forget about well-being in this sector, it's really mindful of the operating environment and how tough it is for everybody. Employers over the years are doing a great deal to look after their teams, but they don't have a magic wand.
No, they don't. They don't at all. My own personal impression of it so far is so we went through some very difficult years during COVID. But as soon as the rules were relaxed and we're all back to face-to-face meetings again, it's almost like there's no more problems. We're all fine now.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think this survey and other surveys have shown that that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, yeah. But and if you look at, debt in particular in our survey this year, so when we ask people lots of questions about what's putting pressure on them both at home and at work. And if you look at what's kind of the biggest source of pressure for people in their home lives, then finances this year are a bigger worry than they were last year. And I think, we see this a lot because obviously in addition to the kind of survey, we deal with thousands and thousands of calls to our helpline and people applying to us for financial support. And people are carrying debt from the pandemic that's getting more severe rather than better.
Yeah, the economic climate's really not helping and really affects mental health issues.
Yeah, it does. I think, there's a kind of a bit of a toxic triangle between feeling pressure to work, worrying about money, and then feeling guilty for not being with your family. And I think that, and this doesn't happen. These kind of negative feelings don't come overnight. This is kind of a long, slow kind of descent into poor mental health. Generally speaking, the people who approach Hospitality Action, they've done a great job of keeping the show on the road for a very long time. It's just one mishap that will tip them from just managing to just not managing.
It's a fine line, isn't it?
Yeah, very, very.
So this survey, managers and team leaders, employees and owners all contributed
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
survey.
The industry is such a broad church. We run the survey, we launch it every May, and we're really lucky that we're really well supported by the trade media. So we're able to get the survey out far and wide, and we run it basically for about 6 weeks until we get to at least 500 respondents. And generally speaking, we get a good representation of kind of the vertical sectors, but also levels of seniority and experience.
So just a bit of background on hospitality action itself. Um, Basically, you like the providing support to anybody within
Yes.
hospitality.
So HA as an organisation has been around for nearly 200 years, believe it or not. So HA started as an association for the coffee house owners of Covent Garden about 200 years ago. So we've been around for a very long time, and we've in that time we're a benevolent charity. So the bulk of our work is providing financial assistance to people who work or who have worked in our sector who have fallen on hard times. And we've got a really long track record and a strong reputation for doing that. I think that we really came to prominence during the pandemic. And I think the reason for that was that all of a sudden the pandemic was to some degree a leveler. And the taboos that might have existed around asking us for help suddenly evaporated. Due to the generosity of people who supported us during that time, we were able to support a lot more people. So I just think, kind of post pandemic, you are probably closer to somebody who we've helped than you ever have been before. And I think the other part of what we do is we provide an employee assistance program to about 200,000 people in the sector. So that means that we have a constant kind of inflow of data and understanding coming our way, because every day we pick up the phone to hospitality employees who are struggling with physical health worries, with mental health worries, with workplace worries, with family worries. So we're able to kind of constantly evolve our service based on kind of what we see happening in the industry. So we're in a really good position to kind of give very targeted support to the sector because we know what's keeping people awake at night.
Yeah, yeah. And I suppose it's no surprise that for a 200-year-old um, association
Yeah, to an organisation, a
or
charity.
organization, that I mean, HA's only sort of like become well known the last 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years, because of COVID and the economic problems. I certainly didn't hear of HA before. So,
I think part of that growth in awareness has been, part for sure, a huge part of it has been the pandemic. I also think that we have been really, really focused on positioning our beneficiaries as the amazing and powerful people that they are. I think maybe you go back 10 years, there was probably more of a sense of reticence to contact us. And, certainly, it's still the case now to an extent that nobody wants to contact a charity because they can't afford to pay the bills or feed their kids. It's not something that's done lightly, but we're really, really aware of that. And we've got a huge amount of respect for the people who come to us. And hopefully that respect shines through in the way that we operate and the way that we speak and the way that we approach people. We are everybody in my team is entirely passionate about leaving everybody who comes to our door in a better state than when they arrived, and we do that in every interaction we have, and we're really passionate about it. So I hope, and the numbers kind of bear it out. I think that we're trusted and we're kind of respected as an organisation who are going to treat people well, and hopefully that then means that people who maybe would have been reticent to contact us in the past are more likely to pick up the phone now, and that's great.
I think after COVID, there's probably people are more not so shy. I don't know if that's the right word, but more likely to come forward because If you was going
I
to
do
pick
agree.
something good out of the COVID experience, if there's one thing you wanted to pick, it would be that we're now talking about mental health issues more.
Yeah, yeah,
And we're talking about
absolutely.
economic pressures on individuals and companies more.
Yeah, yeah, and
So,
I think there's kind of I totally agree. I think that, and our survey bears this out, that year on year, people generally feel that the industry is more happy to have and receive these conversations. I still think there's a persistent issue whereby, and it's in our survey again, about two-thirds of people who lots of people are happy to share a mental health issue, but about two-thirds of people think that there's a risk that by sharing that mental health issue, that they're going to limit their career progression. But then when you look at the survey another way, 75% of people who responded to our survey have suffered with a mental health problem in their adult life. That's all of us. I've suffered with mental health problems to an extent. Most of us do, and our strong belief is that nobody should be defined for the rest of their career by their worst day in the office. So I think that there's still some taboo to break down there, but I think that we've come a long way.
when you talk about sharing experiences, whether it's mental health or economic pressures, when we talk about sharing, is that sharing with people in conversation or sharing as in taking action and contacting somebody, whether it's HA or somebody else, to actually get some help?
So I think it's a bit of both. I mean, the research this year and again in previous years bears it out that hospitality people, like everybody else, if you've got a problem in your life, you're more likely to talk to friends, family, your doctor. But when it comes to the workplace, people will speak to their colleagues and they'll speak to their managers, and there's much more openness to speak to your manager than there's ever been before. And I think managers feel a lot more able to have those conversations. One of the things that we constantly think about is that we hear it a lot that, and it's human nature, when somebody comes to you with a problem, you feel compelled to solve that problem, and that's not what it's about. It's about that person feeling heard, knowing that somebody's there to empathize with them. Just because somebody comes to you with a mental health problem, they trust you enough to confide it in you, it's not, the onus isn't on you then to solve it. And that's where things like our EAP come in, because there's a framework that organizations have where a colleague can refer another colleague to get some help.
And the fact that people are feeling more brave,
Yeah,
I think it would be well. It's a good choice of word. I think people are brave now, or feeling braver that they can share with somebody.
yeah, very
Now,
much.
obviously, with if you're working for a company and you want to share it with your manager, you have to be sure that your manager is going to be not sympathetic but empathetic.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, is actually going to not judge you but listen and then look at ways of helping in some way.
Yeah, yeah, and if you look at, so when we asked managers, so let's look at managers first. So when we asked managers what they want and what they do, so 89% of them, they want to make and take time to listen. So managers are by and large receptive to being spoken to. But what managers want, and managers are practical people, so the first thing a manager's generally going to do from our research, so 68% of them, the first thing they will do is they will look at your shift pattern, they'll look at kind of the practical elements around your work, and is there anything they can do to alleviate that pressure. So changing the time you come into work, changing your hours slightly, they're going to look for practical solutions. But then managers want to work with things like REAP or any AP. Managers want to refer their colleagues to professional help, so to an EAP, to their GP, to counselling services. So managers do best when there's a framework for them to operate within.
Yeah, so we are seeing a change in how companies are dealing with those issues. I mean, does previous surveys show that things are improving in a way that
Yes, so,
middle to upper management are actually responding to people's needs?
so year on year, more and more people are mentioning that they're referring or being referred into EAPs and into services. So I definitely think there's a companies are taking this a lot more seriously now and putting a lot more proactive steps in place. So, mental health first aiders have come on the scene in the last few years and really grown in prominence. And mental health first aiders well-trained managers backed up with an EAP is a really kind of a really potent and powerful mix that we're seeing a lot more employers take on. And the beauty of an EAP is that for quite a low cost, you can kind of massively de-risk things because you've got this entire bank of professional services that can be deployed to help your employees that kind of takes a lot of pressure off HR and the business.
Just to make sure everybody's aware, you said EAP?
Yeah, an employee assistance program. So yes,
Ah, okay.
so
Okay, just want to make
Hospitality
sure.
Action operates an employee assistance program. We've got about 200,000 people on it, and we've been doing that for over 10 years. So an employee assistance program is a service that's driven by by telephone, WhatsApp, and an app, and it enables employees to access professional help, so to access counselling services. So, an employee may have, financial troubles or relationship troubles, they're able to phone the employee assistance program. They're able to speak to a counsellor in the moment, so to have that kind of immediate anxiety resolved. And then the EAP is able to refer them into specialist services. So, for example, we may help people with some legal advice if they're struggling with housing or relationship issues. We may refer people into counselling to help them deal with a psychological issue. We have access to a service called PayPlan. So quite a lot of people who phone into our EAP, their mental health problems are exacerbated by financial problems. So we're able to help people deal with their debt, and that's right through to kind of restructuring and IVAs and all those kind of things. So we're able to help people really get a hold of their debt problems and really alleviate their debt. So it's that kind of mix of the emotional and the practical support that a good employee assistance program can provide. The other thing that ours does that not every EAP does is that we provide focused support for managers. So going back to what I said earlier about how a manager may be compelled to feel they need to kind of provide all the answers. What we do with our employee assistance program is that we encourage the manager to contact us, and we will support the manager for the employee to contact us as well, so that we'll coach the manager to have the conversation with their employee, and then they can pass the employee into our service, safe in the knowledge that kind of we'll do a good job for them, and that we'll report back to the manager what the outcome's been. So it's that kind of real kind of virtuous circle of support that we try and create.
No, that's really important because well, you got to think. I mean, who's going to help the people who are helping?
Yeah,
Who's
yeah,
supporting the supported people? So if you've got managers who've got people who report to him who are going through difficulties, if you're not aware of how to deal with that, then that manager's under stress and under strain and going through difficulties.
absolutely,
So you've really got to make sure you're supporting everybody,
absolutely,
well,
yeah,
as best you can.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not saying it's ever going to be perfect, but you've got to do the best effort. So
Yeah, and it's just helping the manager understand kind of what their boundaries are and how they can proactively support an employee. But ultimately, the support given to that employee will either be done through the employee's assistance program or via the NHS or another route.
yeah, and another thing I know you guys do is you help people with universal credit claims as well.
Yeah, so so one half of our organisation is the employee assistance program. The other part that we do is grant making. And we've given out about 15,000 grants since the pandemic. And there's a range of things we do there. So people generally come to us at the point at which they're facing, homelessness, or they may have had a health concern. So we often help people who have experienced life-changing and unfortunately terminal diagnoses. And we're able to provide people with short-term financial support. So, we help people out of immediate debt or who people who are at risk of homelessness. But what we also do is we've got two additional services. One is we have an amazing benefits advisor, so a lady called Suad, and she just knows the benefits system inside out. She's incredible, and she's able to help people unlock benefits that they're entitled to that they might not be aware of. So quite often people come to Hospitality Action having never intersected with the benefit system at all. They may never have known it. They might not be from the UK. And we're able to help people get the benefits to which they're entitled. And since she started just over a year ago, we've unlocked more than £1 million of benefit. And that's benefits that people can continue to claim for as long as they're entitled to them. So it's hugely valuable for us. And the other area where we offer support is housing advocacy. So we work with Shelter Plus, to help people who are at risk of eviction, to make sure that their landlords are acting in a way that's proper and appropriate.
That sounds so cool. The thing about universal credit is they never volunteer information. You have to know what to ask for. So
It's
actually,
complex by design.
it is complex by design. It's good that it's there, but unless you know what to ask for, you won't necessarily get it. So, and the only reason I'm bringing it up because it's something that a lot of people use,
Yeah,
within hospitality or not. It's a service that's there. Government's trying to be kind. The government's trying to do its best,
yeah.
whichever government's in control, and universal credit there. But as you say, you're gonna know what to ask for, and you've got a dedicated advisor who's experienced in these things and is making some amazing, well, going through some amazing results. It's
Yeah, she's achieved some amazing results, and she understands kind of state benefits, but she also understands local authority schemes. There's schemes that utility companies have that aren't particularly well publicized. So she's able to kind of help people navigate what can be quite an opaque system.
so. How long have you been with the company now? With the organisation, I should say.
So yeah, I've been with Hospitality Action for about 8 years, and I started off. I left university and I worked for the publisher of Cater and Hotel Keeper. So my first kind of job out of uni was selling recruitment space in the back of magazines like The Caterer. So chefs phoning up at 7 o'clock in the morning because one of their colleagues has just walked out and they need another one. Back in the days when jobs were found in the back of magazines, and then I went off and did other things. I went off and I worked for Christian Aid and Water Aid. So I've kind of done consumer fundraising stuff for international development charities. Um, my favorite project at Water Aid was we did a project called the Big Dig, where we went and installed water points in Malawi. And what was special about this project is that we gave a load of local kids mobile phones and they recorded it on Instagram. So it was kind of the first social media campaign of its time. It was great. And then I went back to work for the caterer. And when my boss, Mark Lewis, went to work for Hospitality Action, I joined him about a year into his tenure there. And I was able to kind of bring a mix of fundraising and a real kind of love and understanding of hospitality. So it's been a great few years. And at Hospitality Action, we we rebranded the charity. Then all of a sudden, the pandemic hit, and the rest is history. We've really, as an organisation, grown and continue to grow.
Yeah. So you've had experience of the private sector
Yeah,
as well as the charity sector. So you're bringing quite a lot of experience and skills into the organisation.
yeah. And Hospitality Action is such a great place to work, but it does feel that kind of I've been very lucky that my experience to date kind of landed me at the right place at the right time.
Well, getting back to the report,
Hmm.
and obviously with somebody who's done charity and the private sector, you've got a good understanding of what's impacting well-being right now. For example, I noticed that the under-resourcing and understaffing, um, 57%.
Yeah, yeah. What's really interesting about this survey, so we did it, we ran it in May. So, the NI hike had only been in place for a month. And already at that point, 57% of people were citing under resource. So we asked people, what is the biggest pressure you're feeling at work and what's causing it? And understaffing went from being 36% the year before to 57%. So you're only a month in to this legislation. You've got a more than 10% leap in the impact that under resourcing is having on teams. Now, if you extrapolate that forward to a summer, probably where many less casual staff were hired into places during the peak season, that stat's probably got even worse, sadly, by now. Behind that was high expectations of work-life balance, which is kind of, I suppose it goes without saying that less people trying to kind of meet the same customer expectations is going to have an impact on work-life balance. So I suppose they're a very kind of naturally clustered together group of attributes. What we also do in the survey each year, which I think was very interesting this year too, is we ask people, do they have a good work-life balance? And this year, 59% of respondents said they do. and 41% of respondents said they don't. That in itself has moved. So last year, 62% said they did. So already, just a few weeks into the NI environment, that level of kind of feeling of people that had a good work-life balance was already starting to erode. And when you ask people why, so that yes, I have a good work-life balance camp, they said it's because their employer offers flexibility, it's because they only work their contract hours, and it's because they've got a fair workload. So that's definitely a company that you'd want to work for. Whereas on the other side, people who have a negative view of work-life balance, they say that their workload's excessive, that burnout's considered just part of the job, and that never stick to their contracted hours. And when you dig into those people a little bit more, 61% of the people who said burnout is just part of the job, they're the ones who've most recently had a mental health problem and are the most likely to go off sick.
That's, you're right, that's interesting, because it should never be normal. It shouldn't be accepted as being normal. And that's how that perception has come about. That's be interesting to know how that came about, because as I say, well, you've got a kind of a loop going, because if you're working for a company that's under-resourced and understaffed, you have to do longer hours. So if you're under-resourced and understaffed, you're demanding more of the employees that you've got. So therefore, their work-life balance is going to become a problem. And if you've already had mental health issues in the past, like burnout, then if you already think that's okay as part of the job, it's a bit of a vicious circle.
It is, and but generally speaking, the people that tend to feel that burnout is inevitable tend to be the more junior, those that have worked there for a less amount of time, or people who are hourly paid versus those who are salaried. So it's kind of like there's we've seen it in previous research, we've seen this one, there's this kind of there's a lost third of people who are hardest to reach. So I think that for an HR person or a business owner listening to this, I'm sure that as soon as you heard that, you can visualize the person in your organization who's the hardest to reach and the least likely to kind of engage with the messaging. Start with them, because they're the ones who need to hear it the most.
Yeah, probably quite key to the operation anyway.
Yeah, yeah, and they're the people that people who've been with an organization longer, are more senior, naturally feel closer to kind of the policy because they created it. But it's that real focus on kind of the hardest to reach person. We can all, in our mind's eye, picture who they are in our own businesses, right?
Yeah, yeah. And just going down further on to this section, 27% people say lack of support is a problem. Is that actually a low figure, 27%? Or does that represent more, or more of a look into what's actually going on?
I mean, I think when you ask people, there's always going to be an inevitable kind of issues that come up, and I imagine that lots of people who are feeling a bit disgruntled at work are going to say they've got a lack of support, and I think that's probably bound into the kind of the under-resourcing. I mean, I think a big part of it is that, and we see this a lot in the research that we do every year, that it's tough at the top as well. I think it's very easy in these things to kind of think of kind of the troops on the ground, but actually it's quite tough to be a leader at this time. It's a marginal business. You're having to make some tough calls, and I think that for leaders who feel comfortable to share some of that pressure, that can often have a positive impact on an organization.
So higher up the management levels you go, the more responsibility you have. So if you're right at the top and you're responsible for the whole of the organization, and if you're the kind of good guy that sort of worries about how your staff are, then yeah, you're going to be stressing like the rest of the staff.
Yeah.
Maybe for slightly different reasons, but you're undergoing stress and worrying about how everybody's doing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we put a couple of comments in our report, and one of them, as an owner, the need to be on call 24/7, and that with each month, costs, affordability, and balancing costs are becoming more difficult. It's really hard out there for owners and leaders. So I think it's workplace pressure operates at every level of an organization. I think that it's important organizations remember that.
So earlier on, I was saying how even though we're not talking about COVID anymore, and there's the assumption that now we're back to face, everything's okay. But look at your mental health section. Have you experienced any mental health challenges in your adult life? So looking at 2020, you've got 64%. Then 2024 has gone up to 76, but it's down a percentage point, down to 75 for 2025.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think that reflects probably just the tough few years we've had. It's just been completely relentless. And I think, we all came out of lockdown dusting ourselves off and thinking that was it. And it wasn't it. We've just been hit by wave after wave of challenge within the industry. So I just think that the environment has become more and more challenging, and that pressure cooker of, mental health slowly eroding has just continued. And that's in spite of the great things the industry's done. That's not to say that the industry's done nothing to address it, because that's not true. The industry's done loads to address it, but ultimately the cost of living is still an issue, and that has a knock-on effect.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, people are finding ways to deal with it, and we are talking about more about it. But finding the right solution and actually putting it into action, it's not an overnight process.
No, it's not. It's not.
So, a 200-year-old organization doing amazing support for people within the hospitality sector. Um, how's the funding? Where does the money come from to provide this excellent support to the people who just need it?
So we're funded purely by the generosity of people within the industry and people who love the industry. So everything that Hospitality Action gives out is earned from fundraising and from the generosity of people in the industry. And we've been very lucky that comes in many forms. But there's not a day go by that we don't worry about it coming in.
Yeah, I'm sure that's something you consistently work on just to keep the money coming in. One of the ways you're doing that is the upcoming Walk for Wellbeing.
Yes.
I don't like the sound of that. I'm planning to join the one in Battersea because I'm living in North London, so the most closest to me, I think, would be the Battersea Walk. Yeah, has the participation on that? Has it increased over the years, or?
Yeah, Walk for Wellbeing is great. So I think the best thing about Walk for Wellbeing is that we didn't create it. So Walk for Wellbeing was created by a guy called Craig Prentice, who runs a recruitment business called Mum, and he started Walk for Wellbeing as a response to the loneliness and isolation that people were feeling during COVID. So, Walk for Wellbeing started off as an act of solidarity when people were, remember those weird days we were only allowed out of our house to go to the park. And that's when Craig created Walk for Wellbeing. So, it started as a kind of a thing that we all did while isolated virtually together. And then it's just grown each year from there. And what I think's really special about Walk for Wellbeing is that I just can't think of another industry where loads of people will get out of bed on a Sunday morning and go to one of the 12 locations in the UK and walk to raise money for people like them in the industry that are struggling. I just think it's a really powerful and great thing. And you don't see driving instructors getting out of bed on a Sunday morning. You don't see solicitors doing it. Not to denigrate any of those professions, but I think that it's something that's uniquely hospitality, and I think it's really special.
It's a real demonstration of solidarity, isn't it?
Yeah, big time, big time. And I think, we've each year Walk for Wellbeing's grown in prominence, and this year we're at 12 locations across the UK. We expect there'll be anything up to 1,500 people walking at once. So it's just a really lovely and kind of accessible way for people to raise money for HA, but also to show to the wider industry, to their local and kind of, the wider sector that we all care for each other. I think it's great.
It is a really good demonstration of giving back, of showing support for all your local hospitality people. So that's really, really cool. And also, it's, as you say, it's accessible. So providing that you are able to walk, obviously,
Yeah.
there are some people with disabilities who may not be able to participate in their way. Well, they would do it in their way,
Yeah,
may not be
yeah,
able to join the main group.
yeah. We've had wheelchair users come to the event before, so
Yeah,
we're very
but
accessible.
it's something it's not complicated going out for a walk.
No, exactly, exactly, and it. people, there's a distance to walk. Not everyone does the full distance. People bring their families and their pets, and it's a really great opportunity for people who work together to get together in a completely different context and to have some really positive conversations and just have kind of a really human experience.
Yeah, it is. It's become now more like a social
Yeah,
gathering.
yeah, and there's a really special atmosphere at a Walk for Wellbeing, and I think that it really encourages people to kind of open up and to show a different side of themselves. And we've just launched this week. Actually, we produce an annual guide for participants and for the wider industry, just with like really practical tips of ways that you can foster and have these conversations in your business. Because once you start, it just gets easier and easier.
Yeah. Well, we'll put all the links into the show notes so where people can actually find out more information, read about it, and I would encourage anybody who's able to just to go and participate. So that's next month, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
October.
Yep, starts on October the 10th. We've got all of the guided walks the following Sunday. So there's kind of big group walks happening. I'm not going to list all the places because I'll inevitably forget one, but everywhere from Edinburgh to Cornwall, including London, Bristol, Bath, Liverpool, Birmingham, kind of all the main kind of urban centres in the UK. You're never too far away from a walk on the Sunday. But then also we have what's called Walk It Your Way. So for people that for whatever reason can't get to all of the guided walks, then people within a business or on their own are kind of going for a walk after work one night, or kind of doing it with the dog of an evening. So that there's kind of ways of getting involved if you can't come to one of the kind of the main guided walks.
That is so cool. That's so cool. And as I say, keeps you guys funded and keep up with the good works that you do.
It does. So Walk for Wellbeing last year earned Hospitality Action over £100,000. It's become one of our bigger fundraising events, one of our biggest fundraising events, and I think that it's become a real moment in the calendar. It, it's a great feeling when you work for a charity to kind of have an event that's made it into the calendar and has made it into the collective consciousness. And the Walk for Wellbeing's definitely done that, and it's a wonderful feeling, and that's thanks to Craig and the volunteers who've helped us grow it.
Yeah, I say I'm looking forward to doing mine. I'm going to try and take part in the Battersea. I think it's Battersea. Pretty
Yeah,
sure it's
Battersea
Battersea.
Park.
It's probably the closest one. Besides, I'm going to have to travel to it, so it gets me out the house, which is always good. I
That's
don't.
what it's all
I often
about.
feel I don't get out enough. So
You'll meet loads of people and get some really good insight.
well, this is the thing. I mean, you could actually sort of like every year you participate, you could choose a different location for the walk, so you can actually start meeting lots of people,
Yeah,
and it's kind of networking. So you can actually meet people who are maybe in a similar position as yourself,
yeah,
and maybe the people who've come up with solutions to the problems that you're going through. So it's
yeah,
always good
yeah.
to go and take part.
You can guarantee that you'll get there and meet several hundred people who work in your sector and care about the well-being of it. So it's they're a pretty nice bunch of people.
Yeah, and I take it you've done a walk for wellbeing for each year
I
that you've
haven't
been
actually, I
there.
haven't actually been to one. I had a family illness last year, so I wasn't able to go.
Oh, that's a shame. Well, where are you playing for this year?
Damn, I might go to Newcastle. I might go far away this year.
Oh, that sounds good. Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Well, I encourage everybody to go and take part in a walk for wellbeing. It's
Yeah.
for a very worthy cause for an organisation that's really making a difference
Yeah,
within.
walkforwellbeing.org. It's really easy to participate. We've got a great team of volunteers and staff. So any questions you have, any concerns, then we'll guide you through it and ensure you have a great day out.
Any other ways they can show support?
Yeah, there's loads of ways people can get involved with Hospitality Action. You could make us your charity of the year. So quite often we will be luckily nominated to be the charity of the year for an organisation. So that means that you can do staff fundraising. It's great to get customers involved. So you can put invisible chips on your menu. It's a great way to demonstrate to your customers that you care about the well-being of the sector, and it's a great way of showing the staff as well that you're behind the sector. You could put a pound on the bill. You could have a special drink or a cocktail or a dish on your menu for us. We have a number of black tie events throughout the year, so We've got our winter chef's dinner happening in November. We've got Back to the Floor the year after. So there's lots of events that you can come to and participate in. And if you're an operator who's able to give us a prize, to donate a prize, an afternoon tea, a stay, a meal, then they would be gratefully received because they help us raise money at our events.
Yeah, so there's no reason why people shouldn't be able to go and
And I
take
think
part and help out.
I think what makes Hospitality Action so special is that by getting involved with us as a charity and by having our EAP, it's a real virtuous circle because you're engaging your staff not only in their well-being, but the wider well-being of the sector. And I think it's a really the clients that we've got who are both fundraising and EAP clients, they have a really positive well-being result.
Definitely. Well, I'll put as many links as I can that to all the things, the hospital action, walk for wellbeing. I'll put them all in the show notes so people can find out
Brilliant.
more. And really good to talk to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.